Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are pulling up a chair at the library study table at Greendale Community College.
Oh, I'm ready for this one.
Yeah, but listen, we aren't just here to quote lines or laugh at the antics of the study group. Even though, let's be honest, we probably will a little bit.
Naturally.
But we are really focusing on one specific character who arguably changed the landscape of television forever. We're talking about Abed Nadir from the sitcom community.
Cool.
I knew you were going to do that. It had to be done.
I couldn't resist.
But look, on the surface, Abed is just the funny, pop culture-obsessed film student. He's kind of the quirk in the machine. But if you look at the stack of research we have today,
And it is a huge stack.
it really is. We've got stuff ranging from academic journals on TV narrative structures, media critiques from Den of Geek and Static Media, and even some really compelling disability advocacy slides. And across the board, Abed is viewed as a landmark case study.
He really is. And the mission for this deep dive is for you, the listener, to understand why. Because for a long time, and I mean decades, neurodivergent characters in media fell into very specific, often harmful boxes.
Right.
You basically had two options. It was either the burden trope or the super detective.
Oh, right, like the Rain Man effect.
Yeah.
The person who is magical at math or counting toothpicks but supposedly can't tie their shoes or have a real conversation.
Precisely. It was a complete binary, and it was incredibly limiting. But the argument here across all these sources is that Abed Nadir completely changed the rules.
Yeah.
He moved us past those tropes to show how someone can use pop culture not just to escape reality, but to actually survive it and navigate the complex social web.
And to do that, we have to talk about the word that basically defines Abed, the word that is practically his middle name.
Meta.
Meta, exactly.
Meta concept. It is the absolute engine that runs this character.
So let's unpack this first, because meta is a buzzword that gets thrown around so much these days. Usually when we say something is meta, we just mean it's self-referential.
Yeah, like a movie winking at the audience.
Right, like saying, hey, I know I'm a movie. Deadpool does it constantly. Fleabag does it with those little looks to the camera. But the sources suggest Community is doing something much more complex than just winking at us.
It is much, much deeper. If we look at the actual history of meta-cinema, we're usually talking about high art European directors like Fellini or Godard,
Oh, sure.
filmmakers calling attention to the artifice of the medium itself. But Community, and specifically Abed, uses this differently. There's a great explanation from a Reddit thread in our research stack that puts it perfectly.
I loved that thread.
Right. It says it's not just saying, hey, this is a show. It is using tropes to comment on tropes.
So it's recursive. It's layers upon layers.
Yes. Abed doesn't just think he's in a TV show for the sake of a quick gag. And this is the crucial part. He views the world through the lens of film and TV. Because for him, that makes the world predictable. It makes it manageable.
That is a really crucial psychological distinction. Because if you think about it, in the real world, social interactions are incredibly messy.
Very messy.
They're completely unstructured. People don't say what they mean. There's subtext, there's sarcasm. But in a sitcom...
In a sitcom, there are rules.
Right. There's a structure, there's a setup and a punchline, there's a resolution in exactly 22 minutes.
Exactly. And that strongly appeals to a mind that craves order. Abed isn't quote-unquote crazy or delusional for thinking life is a show. He's using a framework, arguably the only framework that makes sense to him, to understand his social reality.
He's mapping chaos onto order.
He's translating human into script.
Which leads us to one of the most interesting nuggets in the Static Media article. They quote the show's creator, Dan Harmon, discussing this exact mechanic. And Harmon has this fascinating take that Abed isn't breaking the fourth wall.
No, Harmon argues Abed is protecting the fourth wall.
Yeah.
Or, as he beautifully puts it, he's caressing it.
Caressing the fourth wall.
Yeah.
That completely changes the dynamic. It's not aggressive, it's actually comforting.
It's profound if you really sit with it. Harmon says that if a character turns to the camera and simply says, hey, we're on TV, that breaks the illusion. It pushes the viewer away. It reminds you that none of this actually matters.
Yeah.
But if a character says, wow, this situation feels remarkably like a bottle episode of a sitcom, that actually validates the viewer.
Because we, the viewers, are literally sitting there on the couch thinking, this feels like a bottle episode.
Exactly. It makes the show feel more real, not less. Because there are people out there, specifically neurodivergent people or just really intense pop culture fans, who actually process their lives that way. They see the patterns. So when Abed points it out, he's saying, I see what you see. He is bridging the gap between the screen and the couch.
We really have to look at the bottle episode example specifically because it is so iconic. This is the episode Cooperative Calligraphy. The whole group is stuck in the study room because Annie's pen is missing.
A classic sitcom budget-saving trope. You keep everyone in one single set to save money for the big finale. It's a total staple of the industry.
Right, but usually the characters inside the show don't know that. Here, Abed immediately calls it out. He predicts they're in a bottle episode. He identifies the trope while he is living inside of it.
And by naming it, he navigates it. That is his superpower. He knows the rules of a bottle episode. He knows relationships will be tested, secrets will come out, emotions will flare. But he also knows eventually the status quo will be restored.
That knowledge gives him a sense of safety that the other characters just don't have. They're panicking about a lost pen, but he knows they'll be okay because the genre demands they be okay.
It's almost like he has the script ahead of time. But then, it gets darker.
Oh.
There's that incredibly trippy storyline in the episode Messianic Myths and Ancient Peoples. Abed decides to make a film about Jesus.
This is the mirror in a mirror moment. This is where the meta actually gets dangerous.
Very dangerous. Abed wants to make a film where he plays Jesus, who is a filmmaker trying to find God with a camera, only to realize he's being filmed by God.
My brain hurts just trying to visualize that narrative structure. It is infinite regress.
It is quintessential meta-cinema. But notice the outcome in the show? It becomes uncontrollable. It becomes literally the word ABED in all caps on the movie poster.
Yeah, it shows the danger of pure abstraction.
But even then, the show treats his ambition with a certain level of respect. It's an exploration of how he tries to place himself in a narrative to find ultimate meaning. He's trying to find the director. He is trying to find the one holding the camera.
Which is a very human thing to do, whether you're neurodivergent or not. We all want to know who's directing the movie of our lives.
Exactly.
So we've established that Abed uses this meta lens to function. But let's shift to the social aspect. How does the show handle his neurodivergence specifically? Because looking at the advocacy slides in our stack, Abed is labeled as an anti-stereotype.
This is a huge part of his legacy. We have to look at positive normalization versus negative normalization. One of the biggest complaints about autism representation in media, historically speaking, is the burden trope.
The idea that the story is really about how hard it is for the family or the friends to deal with the autistic person. The autistic person is the obstacle.
Correct. You see this in a lot of heavy television dramas. The autistic character is just a problem to be solved, managed, or endured.
Right.
But in Community, that dynamic is almost never present. Abed's neurodivergence isn't the burden. The conflict in the show almost always comes from everyone else's flaws.
Jeff's narcissism, Britta's performative activism, Pierce's bigotry, those are the actual problems.
Exactly. Abed is usually the most stable one in the room. He is just Abed. He is the baseline.
There's a really sharp comparison in our notes regarding the show Atypical. I know the show has its fans, but the critique here from the disability advocacy slides is quite specific regarding accountability.
Yes, and it's a very contentious point in the disability community. In Atypical, the protagonist breaks into his therapist's home.
Which is a massive violation.
It's a crime. But the narrative sort of frames his autism as a shield. Like, oh, he didn't know any better, so it's excusable. It infantilizes him.
And Community refuses to let Abed off the hook like that.
Never. There is a scene involving a lab rat that perfectly illustrates this. Abed and Troy lose their rat. Britta, who is trying to be quote-unquote sensitive but is actually being incredibly condescending, tells Abed, oh, the rat is probably happy living somewhere else.
She's treating him like a toddler who can't handle the concept of death.
Right. And Abed's response is legendary. He just looks at her deadpan and says, try to join the rest of us in reality, Britta.
I love that line so much. It completely flicks the script.
It does. The joke isn't on Abed's autism. The joke is on Britta's ignorance and her totally false assumption that he's fragile. It shows that Abed is fully accountable and grounded in reality, sometimes much more so than the neurotypical characters who are constantly lying to themselves.
Then you have the other side of the coin. If he isn't the burden the other trap writers fall into is the superpower trope. The idea that to be a valid autistic character, you have to be some kind of genius savant.
The Sherlock syndrome. Or the mildly autistic super detective.
Which they explicitly call out in this show. I love that Community is not subtle about this at all. There's that scene in Center 5 where Dean Pelton literally asks Abed to stand at a crime scene and see what happened.
It's such a biting meta-commentary on lazy television writing. The Dean essentially wants Abed to be the good doctor or Rain Man. He wants the disability to be a convenient plot device that solves the crime.
And Abed just flat out refuses.
He called it bad writing. He says, I see a man using a social disorder as a procedural device. Pain.
Painful writing. He actually says it hurts him to participate in the cliché.
It effectively kills the trope right there on screen. By having the character identify the stereotype and reject it, Community tells the audience, we aren't doing that here. Abed is a person, not a calculator. He's not here to solve your mystery.
But we really can't talk about sitcom autism representation without addressing the elephant in the room, the rivalry with the Big Bang Theory.
Yes, the autistic space race, as one of our sources from Den of Geek calls it.
The Big Bang Theory obviously had massive ratings. It was an absolute juggernaut. But the sources argue Community has the longevity and the hardcore cult following specifically because of its representation. What is the fundamental difference in how they treat the behavior between Sheldon Cooper and Abed Nadir?
It all comes down to the laugh track and the framing. Take the spot on the couch. In The Big Bang Theory, Sheldon's insistence on his spot is treated as totally unreasonable. It's annoying to his friends, and crucially, there is a laugh track.
Right.
When he enforces his boundary, the audience is explicitly instructed to laugh at the behavior.
The cue is basically, look at the weird guy doing the weird thing.
Exactly. But in Community, Abed has needs. He has routines, but the group accommodates them. Or, if they don't, that is the actual source of the conflict. But the show laughs with Abed, or, more often, at the absolute absurdity of the situation around him.
His needs are treated as valid accommodations, not just punchlines.
Yes. That distinction between laughing at and laughing with is subtle, but it makes all the difference in how the character feels to the viewer. It is dignity versus caricature.
And that dignity obviously comes directly from the writing. Which brings us to the man behind the curtain, Dan Harmon.
This part of the deep dive gave me a genuine aha moment. It explains so much about why the character feels so authentic and not just like a clinical collection of symptoms.
It is a fascinating piece of backstory. When Harmon started writing Community, he didn't think he was Abed.
No, he thought he was Jeff Winger, the cool, cynical lawyer who thinks he's better than everyone else.
Which says a lot about how we view ourselves versus who we really are. But as Harmon began writing Abed, he started researching the symptoms of Asperger's and autism to make sure he was getting the character right. He wanted to be accurate, presumably to avoid being offensive.
And in doing the research, he started checking the boxes for himself.
He realized he was writing himself.
This wasn't just observation anymore, it was autobiography. Harmon eventually sought out his own late-in-life diagnosis because of this. And you can see that realization play out in the show's evolution.
How so? Does the writing change?
Well, season 1 starts with Jeff as the clear anchor. He's the normal guy entering the weird world of Greendale. But as the seasons progress, the center of gravity totally shifts. Abed becomes what some critics call the shaman of the group.
The shaman. That sounds almost mystical.
In a narrative sense, it is. He predicts the plot. He understands the narrative arc everyone is in. He becomes a divinatory figure. If Abed says it's a bottle episode, the universe bends to make it a bottle episode. The show stops trying to fix Abed and starts realizing that Abed is the only one who truly understands what is going on. He guides the tribe through the chaos because he can read the signs, the narrative signs.
That leads perfectly into the emotional core of the character. Because another massive stereotype is that autistic people are emotionless or robotic.
Which is a complete myth. And one that Community works incredibly hard to dismantle. Abed feels deeply. He just communicates those feelings through a different language, the language of pop culture.
The Chicken Fingers episode is the prime example of this. It's a Goodfellas homage.
A total classic. Abed creates a mafia hierarchy controlling the cafeteria's chicken fingers. But look at his motivation. It's not because he wants power or money. He says it explicitly in a voiceover. He says, now everyone is speaking the same language. Chicken.
He's building a bridge.
He uses the movie tropes to connect with the group, to gain social capital, to be a provider for his friends. It is an act of love, translated through Martin Scorsese. He's essentially saying, I don't know how to make small talk, but I know how to be a mob boss who takes care of his crew.
And then there is the Dreamatorium. To an outsider, or honestly to a less nuanced writer, this would just look like a grown man playing make-believe in an empty room.
But in the context of the show, the Dreamatorium is an empathy engine. It's not just a place for him to hide. Abed uses it to run simulations. He plays out scenarios to understand how his friends might feel or react to things. He is literally simulating empathy to bridge the gap between his mind and theirs.
It's highly sophisticated emotional labor.
It is work. He is putting in the work to understand them.
That brings up his relationship with Troy. Troy and Abed in the morning.
Is it the best bromance in television history?
I am certainly not arguing against it. But what makes it work, according to the sources, isn't just that they are funny together, it's the mutual respect.
Yes. Troy never pities Abed, and Abed never judges Troy. Their fake morning show is a completely safe space. They are performing for an audience of zero, just themselves.
It's pure, unmasked joy.
It validates Abed's need to perform his life without subjecting him to the ridicule of the outside world. And Troy just jumps right into the frame with him.
But it's not all fun and games. There is real trauma there, too. We have to discuss the Claymation Christmas episode, Abed's Uncontrollable Christmas. That one hits hard.
It is absolutely heartbreaking. Abed starts seeing the entire world in stop-motion animation. The group thinks he snapped, that he's having a psychotic break. But as they journey through this winter wonderland in his mind, they realize it's a coping mechanism.
Because his mother cancels their Christmas plans, a tradition they held every single year to watch the Rudolph special together.
Right, the one constant in his life. The one scheduled event he completely relied on is removed. She has a new family. So he retreats into the visual style of Rankin Bass Christmas specials, like Rudolph and Frosty. Because those stories have happy endings. Those stories have structure.
So the visuals aren't just a gimmick for a holiday episode.
No, they represent his raw emotional state. It blends genre parody with totally sincere grief. It shows that his delusions are actually sophisticated emotional shields. He is protecting himself from heartbreak the only way he knows how.
And beautifully, the group doesn't force him to just snap out of it.
They enter the delusion with him to help him process the grief.
And despite all that, despite the trauma, the social friction, the confusion, Abed is surprisingly confident.
He really is. He is very comfortable in his own skin.
There's that great quote where someone tries to help him with his confidence and he says he has self-esteem falling out of his butt.
That is the ultimate goal of positive representation. He knows he doesn't fit the mold. He knows he's the weirdest person in the room, but he likes himself.
Yeah.
He accepts that he is a character who needs to filter life through TV to understand it, and he is okay with that.
He doesn't want a cure.
No, he just wants to watch the next episode.
So if we zoom out from all of this, what is the big takeaway here for you? Why does Abed matter beyond just being a great character on a funny show?
It means we move from coded representation, where a character is weird and robotic, but they never actually say the word autism, to something that is canon and deeply human. Abed proved that you can have a character with significant support needs who struggles with basic social cues, and yet he can still be the hero. He can be the director. He can be the heart of the story.
And referring back to those advocacy slides, this is the very definition of positive normalization.
Exactly. It normalizes the communication style. It normalizes the access needs. It doesn't make him a tragedy. And it certainly doesn't make him inspiration porn for neurotypical people. He's just Abed.
And honestly, he's seeing the world in a way that maybe we all do, a little bit, now that we live in such a heavily media-saturated world.
We all look for narratives. We all look for tropes to help us understand our lives. We categorize our friends as the main character or the comic relief. Abed just does it out loud.
Which brings us to a final thought to leave you with today. We've spent this whole deep dive analyzing Abed, a character who believes he is in a TV show to make sense of his reality.
A character who protects the fourth wall.
Right. So, if Abed sees the world as a TV show, and you are listening to us analyze him right now in this structured, episodic audio format, does that make us the audience? Or are we just characters in someone else's bottle episode?
This is getting way too meta even for me.
Cool. Cool. Thanks for joining us for the deep dive. See you next time.